Hello, everybody. It is Thursday, March 11, 2021, and this is your host, Professor Hamamoto. And I will tell you up front, I plan on spending more time in the chat room. I feel that I've been negligent in responding to some of your comments, and your observations today are more important than ever, because it seems that we're having a crisis, manufactured or not. We'll find out from the chat here. We're having a crisis in the royal household. That's their royalty. That's their nobility. I'm using their terminology. Of course, I don't recognize their legitimacy or their presumed power over us. They do exercise financial, political, and cultural power over the American people, but we can overcome all of that if we understand the situation correctly, to the best of our ability here. So you're going to be part of this process in helping us understand where we're at. Derek Holmes says that it's a Hollywood soap opera. Well, I guess that's the natural inclination to dismiss it as such. And I think that's exactly what a lot of the forces who are engineering this event want us to believe. I think it goes much deeper than that, and I'll explain why in a moment, at least from my perspective. And then I'm sure you'll have some information too, Derek, about how we can attack this, we can understand it. A mom with bulldogs is here. Hi there. Yes, hi. I'm glad you can join us today. And if you have any celebrity sightings that you want to share, maybe you saw Meghan Markle shopping at Harrods or getting her nails done at a salon, which all have been closed. David Jimmy is here. Yeah, he's one of the Patreon people. I'm glad the Patreon people are here. They're really interesting. Wow, Simon. I'm sorry, I can't read the small print. I got to pop it out here. Let me pop out the screen. I don't want to mispronounce I'll probably mispronounce your name anyway. But as you can see, it's Simon Cherniak. If I'm mispronouncing your name, my sincere apologies, but you're from Slovenia. Yes, great. The land of Melania Knobs, Melania Naus, and now Melania Trump. And as you know, I understand, I view her, I interpret her as the sacred feminine redemptor of the American public. So, and Norman Smith is here. Too bad we don't have an audio feed. That's going to be another new feature in YouTube that they should have, as well as a two-way communication. So I'll figure that out so that we can go back and forth. But Norman, I enjoyed your call yesterday at the, I guess it's still called Neighborhood News Hour. As most of us know, George Webb got bumped again, and I hope to engage him in a little bit more of a in-depth discussion today at 5 o'clock, 8 o'clock Eastern time on the Thursday trio. I want to get some more information about the most recent attack on George Webb. So thank you for calling in. Okay, Simon gave me a phonetic spelling in Roman alphabet. Cherniak. I'm sorry. I will visit your beautiful country one day, and I'll look at the rivers, the mountains, and the landscape, and the beautiful people, and I will learn a little bit. I'm negligent there, and this gives me a lot of incentive. I would like to go to Slovenia and perhaps I can meet with or be in touch with Melania's parents who live in the United States. And I want to research the family. I want to go to some of the places in their ancestral town and the burial area and the church they attended and all of it. And in the process, I'll be expanding my own knowledge base, because I think I'm onto something right here. And Simon, while I'm at it, please, you have the language ability, primary language ability. So whatever research you can come up with us, please stay in touch, and we'll filter it. We'll put it out there to the global public, and hopefully you'll write about it or do an interview, or if you have a YouTube channel, you can communicate this information to us That's very exciting to me that we have this international community of citizen researchers, citizen journalists, and it shows you once more that the people, this everyday peasantry, that's us, cannot be held down, right? We periodically rise up against the presumed powers that be. So, and that's part of the reason why I'm holding this particular session today. The people who think they're in charge know that there's only so much physical abuse that that a population can sustain, and that's why I titled today's talk or today's session, because I'm going to do less talking today, as I said. That's why I titled today's get together as Operation Hearts and Minds. Let me explain. I looked on Wikipedia, and that's okay. You know, it's not cheating. You can look on Wikipedia as long as you move past it. But I see that phrase, see, I assume that it started during the Vietnam War in the 60s, during the presidential administration of Lyndon Baines Johnson. And I thought that's where he originated, because he always would talk about the hearts and minds of the Vietnamese people. We as Americans, he was speaking in our name because I was anti-Vietnam War. I was a staunch opponent of American military involvement in Vietnam. And that's where I differ significantly with a lot of people who consider themselves conservatives here. And that's why during that period of time, I identified more at the left, because back then, the left was anti-war. Today, in 2021, they're pro-war. They want a war with Russia. They want to have chaos and destruction, so that I guess they can, as George and his research team have been really putting it out, so that they can generate more sources of revenue for their family dynasties. So, hearts and minds was the phrase that Johnson used in order to help justify the American involvement in Vietnam, where we had no business being there, right? Except for the business of selling Bell helicopters and ordnance and Agent Orange, and helping the Dow Chemical Company become even richer, and all the different military contractors, right? We know that now. Most of us know that and don't support it. So they're going to try a different approach. They're going to, the handlers, the propaganda people, say we're going to win the hearts and minds of the American people in 2021, and we're going to do it with a tried and true strategy. We're going to dangle the bauble, the bright little distractive, hypnotizing, follow the bouncing watch of royalty, because we Americans don't have a king. George Washington politely declined becoming king of America. He wanted a republic form of governance, and we've had that until January 6th, 2021. But don't worry, we're going to win back the republic. The psyops, and British psyops is one of the tops in the world, maybe number one, but their psyops understand, and they're which is BBC, the British Broadcasting Company, the British Film Institute, BFI, and all the people who have been exfiltrated to the U.S., like Tina Brown and Wintour, I've talked about. There's a lot of British subjects, or people with binationality. They're American citizens and British citizens in media, in American media, because that's where the war is being waged. And I know you're hearing a lot of talk, and it's true to a large extent, but you're hearing talk about the Chinese takeover, the Chacom takeover of American media, of U.S. media, but it's still very much in control of the City of London and British tastemakers and newsmakers. And I was amused to see our disgraced friend, Piers Morgan, being so upset on one of his chat shows based in London about how Harry and Meghan's little Donnybrook had shed such a bad light on the monarchy, which he holds sacred. So we owe Alex Jones a huge debt of gratitude for sending Piers Morgan back where he came from. All right, let me, Corky asked, word to listen in Simon. Hi guys, Bob K. The more we understand the goal, none of your business. So we understand the goal, we become familiar with the strategy of the sick upper. Yes, absolutely. We're going to break it down. Most of us don't like being looked down on or held down, and we don't appreciate. I mean, we do as Americans believe in these egalitarian values, and we're not so much held down by these traditional hierarchies. We are in practice, but attitudinally, we're still not there yet. They're going to try to. I mean, the controllers want us to accept these hierarchies and internalize them, but it's not working very well so far. Norman says, and Norman is a guitarist and musician, says, I believe Simon produced the heavy metal song about Melania. Is that Simon? Really? Oh, that's great. Because I've seen it. If that's you, congratulations. Anyway, yeah, music is going to bring us together. Maybe you two can collaborate on an international project, because Melania belongs not just to Slovenia, but she also is very beloved in the United States of America. Even though Tina Brown, who runs fashion magazines, Anna Wintour, and all the tastemakers studiously avoided giving any attention to Melania Trump, because she's so classy and beautiful and intelligent, and she just has a super magical presence. And this is not something that the power elite wants to promote. They want to promote someone like Michael Obama. Not coincidentally, yesterday's talk was about the Santa Cruz death trip, right? And I talked about Jordan Peele's fascinating. He's the director. He's an American director. He directed Us, U.S., and then later Get Out, which was a couple of years ago. But his job, and believe me, he's been approached and told what the script is for his career and what type of movies he's going to put out there. He is a brand name, just like Annie Jacobson is a brand name to put out all this literature that real pioneers in independent journalism put down there. And now she's coming to sweeping it up and say, yeah, it's really too bad about DARPA and mind control and poisoners and all that, but we got it under control now. So Jordan Peele and Jordan Peterson too, I thought was a slip, but these are brand names. These are entities, figures that are representing a certain psyops, a certain stream of psyops, and he's a brand. So he's talking about the fascination, supposedly, of the power elite, and it's true for the elite, not for the rest of us. The use of African bodies, and the organ extraction, and I'm hearing and I'm reading, and I've tried to find some medical literature that would really help the argument here about the reality of these abductions, these kidnappings, these missing person deals, and these drive-by shootings, African American, mostly young males, places like Chicago, for organ transplantation purposes. And we know that in China, and this is documented, that in China, certain groups are targeted, especially in the West, for organ extraction, because when you want to talk about international trade of illicit goods, it's not just drugs, it's not just armaments and resources, but organs are also figure heavily into that cash nexus, and I'm sure the usual suspects are involved there. And the reason why I mentioned Jordan Peele is because we're going to be talking about, hopefully you'll have some information for me here in the chat room, talking about specifically, again, the matriarchal, the maternal line, just like we were discussing briefly, Melania Trump. We're going to talk about Meghan Markle. And hopefully I am going to bring up different perspective from the cliched, academic, institutionalized rhetoric that we've been hearing for the past 40 years about race, class, gender. I have a different take on what she represents empirically and symbolically. Let's see here. Charette. Oh yeah, Simon, my love, Melania. That's your tune? That is you. Welcome, Simon. Yeah, we got all kinds of talent here from all over the world. Man, when I come to your town, I'm gonna come to your studio and maybe you let me plan a track with you. Okay. Well, this mom with that's a really interesting comparison. Grace Kelly, mom with bulldogs, glides. Oh, she's got style. I think I'm going to do a complete talk on Grace Kelly, and it's going to be more like a monologue because I have a lot of material on her. I'm just very briefly. She was sacrificed. She was sacrificed, just as Diana Spencer was sacrificed in a ritual fashion. And by the way, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here, but I had a premonition today that this whole brouhaha with Harry and Meghan, just like the event of January 6, 2021, I think all this that's going on right now, the buildup, it's going to end in another female sacrifice. And Meghan and Harry are going to come forth and console us. They're going to provide succor and a crying towel to the world. We're going to be mourning someone very important shortly. And that's what the part of the psyops, I believe, is involved with. So it's more than a soap opera. It's going to be a tragedy. It's going to be a tragicomedy. But if we're talking about it like this and anticipating it, they might stand down, and and as a result, another martyred death. We've talked about the assassination of John F. Kennedy, which, our beloved president. We talk about that as a ritual sacrifice in Dallas on November 23rd. And by the way, when I gave a talk, I should tell you a little bit about my interest in Diana Spencer. And she was of the Stewart line, by the way, because remember, we're talking about bloodlines. We're having this discussion. We're talking about the Meghan Markle bloodlines. And I think there's more to it than what we're conventionally being told from the race, class, gender crowd in academia and in the institutions. And I'll spell out a little bit more specifically what I mean about that. Okay, let me continue here. The gold color says, I believe that elites hate beauty and grace. Yeah, they certainly do. They hate beauty. Let's see, what did Matthew Arnold call it? And I'm not a big Matthew Arnold fan because I know there's some problems with his politics, but he did come up with this phrase, beauty and light, right? Or what's it called? Goodness and sweetness and light? Sweetness and light. Yeah, sweetness and light. So sweetness is beauty, and light is intelligence. For him, that was the feminine ideal, the female principal ideal. And yeah, I agree. They hate beauty and intelligence of women, and specific women are targeted in most of these operations here. Love Grace Kelly and Vertigo with James Stewart. That was a good one. And Alfred Hitchcock, man, I think no one's really spoken of him in these terms, but I think the great director Alfred Hitchcock was read in at some point. By that I mean he was given a talking to by officials with MI, military, the MI6 or MI5, whatever initial you want to use, or the British Film Institute, definitely, or Tavistock is the usual name for the constellation of propaganda entities that we know about. I think there's some in there that are unknown to us. And he was indeed, Alfred Hitchcock, sent from London to Los Angeles. He was a trans-American, not transsexual, but a transatlantic transplant to the U.S. to put forth these encoded messages. And I think Grace Kelly's career, she was probably groomed to that point, and then later married off to royalty, the Prince of Monaco, right? Well, you know the story, and I'll give a whole talk on Grace Kelly. I have some interesting. Okay, P. Diddy she has an interesting bloodline background as well. We can approach that. I think she wants to beat us to the punch. She's already sacrificed America. They've already pushed that doddering fool usurper Joe Biden off the stage, and they've pretty much taken over. It's been a bloodless palace coup. They realize the Americans are pretty much fed up with all the gunplay with President John F. Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy, Martin Luther. I can go on and on and on. It has nothing to do with the wild American West. It has nothing to do with the Second Amendment or the guns and all that. It has everything to do with the power elite that, just like the medieval barons of old, are just involved in usurpation after usurpation after usurpation. He was a knight of the realm. Sir Alfred Hitchcock, great writer, really tapped into the elite psychosis. Yes, definitely. And the gold color who makes this comment probably knows that Alfred Hitchcock was obsessed with blondes. He liked blonde actresses, not just on a sexual level, but at a deep, sacrificial, mystical level, a psychosocial level. And they also had to be icy. They had to be ice queens, kind of inaccessible, or as we call it, emotionally unavailable. And then they're put through all these trials and tribulations. Oh yeah, Simon says we're going to have a play. Yeah, we're going to have a rock. That's great. Thank you so much. Hitch was a plant, probably. He scared me as a child. He went over to television, and anybody who's old enough to remember there's Alfred Hitchcock Presents, and he had a little silhouette there, and he would merge right into it, and there was this portly gentleman. I didn't know that by that time he was a world famous director, but he was on television to get, I guess, people like me, the kids who weren't going to the movie. We were sitting in front of the television all the time. Okay. Yes, it was Prince Rainier III of Monaco, which is the sunny place for shady people. It's one of those zones that I have been talking to John O'Loughlin about and George Webb, the zones where the globally elite can meet and do their plotting and kind of retreat to and enjoy themselves gambling and whoring and drinking and whatever else that they do. And then they go to different sovereign countries and do their work. So yeah, Monaco is definitely one of those places. Peter Lorre, we call him Peter Lorre. Peter Lorre, yeah, he was an import from, I think, from Vienna. And he didn't speak a word of English when he came here, but he was brought in to fill the casting needs of what is called Weimar on the Pacific. I was on the show with Peter Duke and Tracy Connors a couple days ago, and he lives in Pacific Palisades, where all of these Weimar Republic directors and actors and writers and art directors moved in large numbers to infiltrate what's called the American film industry. It's kind of a misnomer because it's really a composite of different groups of people. So these people are talking about the Chi-Com infiltration of Hollywood. What about the Weimar Republic infiltration of Hollywood? What about the British infiltration of Hollywood? What about the Mexican infiltration of Hollywood? A lot of people don't know that Mexico looms very large in the American film industry. What do you think they're going to, launder all the money, with the drug trade and the human trafficking? A lot of it makes its way through films, and we see it on screens. It has that double purpose to launder the money, pay the beautiful and the damned, right? Luxurious fees, and make them stars, synthetic stars, and build them up and rip them down or pimp them out. And at the same time, enjoy huge tax advantages for these sort of instant corporations that can be manufactured and then dissolved, and they can move on from project to project. Someone needs to write a new history of world cinema from New World Order perspective, not just in terms of ideology, but how it functions in the international banking system. Hollywood infiltration of America. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, we've been self-infiltrated. right? When the expression "go screw yourself." Well, yeah, I think that's what we're doing right now. Grace Kelly was factually a knockout. Yes, indeed, she was a beauty queen I think she was from Philadelphia. Her father, Jack, was a fairly well-to-do contractor. I'm sure he was probably connected, you know what I mean? Connected to get all these lucrative contracts. And her brother was a Olympic rowing champion, I believe, Olympic, World Games. She comes out of that lineage, and she was groomed for greatness. And yeah, I've read a couple of bios of hers, and she's a fascinating person. And by the way, for her times, she was fairly sexually liberated. In fact, the more biographies I read of women of old, not just from the 50s, but 19th century, my idea that sexual liberation only came to America in the 1960s, but I was way off. I mean, it's always been here. It was only super promoted and added with drugs and hyped up in the 1960s. But sexual liberation is synonymous with human experience, right? Because, wow, it's powerful. Okay, let me talk a little bit, and I'll come back to the chat in a moment. I really like these interesting comments that Jermaine is very. I want to really dive in here, but anyway, yeah, Randy Quaid. Wow, yeah, he jumped off the carousel none too soon up in Santa Barbara. By the way, one of his neighbors up there in Santa Barbara, Randy Quaid, we're talking about, and his wife. I forgot her name. Santa Barbara is a place where a lot of the stars who don't want to live in LA are up further north in Santa Barbara County, where UC Santa Barbara is, by the way, university, and a secret society of women, by the way, sororities, the sorority that I'll talk about later. And Oprah has a home there. It's not in Santa Barbara. I forgot the name of the community, but it's super wealthy up there. So that was his milieu so I'm sure he got to see a lot of mansion parties and got an inside look on how these people operate, including Queen Oprah herself, who also has a home in Maui, I understand, and has a home in South Africa where she has a quote unquote girls' school. You know what I mean? Okay. So anyway, I first, like a lot of people, got interested in Diana Spencer prior to her death in 1997. It was splashed all over. People like Tina Brown and Anna Wintour and the whole hype machine. This as Winston Churchill, whose mother was American, I believe, he liked to characterize it as the special relationship between Britain and the United States. Two countries separated by a common language. That was paraphrasing him, right? He was such a wag, so funny, Winston. So the hype machine was running over time. And again, Diana Spencer was built up as a virgin primary school teacher, shy of Asian. She couldn't even look at the camera, wore conservative, high-collared outfits. And then she went through this process of fashion and behavioral makeover. I'm sure it was all scripted by the members of the British Film Institute, people of the time, someone along the lines of Stephen Frears, who's become little more than the official cinematographer of the British Crown royalty, Stephen Frears. Let me talk about him briefly before I return to Princess Diana, because a lot of you have seen these films but don't know the director who's attached to them. One was The King's Speech, right? 2010, and this was this, I forgot his name, Prince Albert or Prince Edward. He was the one that had a speech impediment that had to overcome his phobia of microphones and of addressing the public, and it shows about how this teacher kind of brought him along. It's kind of like The Miracle Worker, right, with Anne Bancroft and Patty Duke, and it really touches your heart. I mean, you feel sorry for the king, even though he's presides over this vast global empire of slaves, right? So Frears directed that in 2010. He also, 7 years later, directed Victoria and Abdul. And this is the grandmother of the current queen, the current occupant of the throne. Queen Victoria, right? And during her reign, that was the height of the geographic British Empire. The geography shrank 2021 though, but the empire is bigger than ever. It's just that they provide the illusion that these various countries have sovereignty, and they let the United States kind of take the lead so far as a military aggression. But make no mistake about it, the City of London and the British monarchy is still very much in control of world resources, the people within it. We peasantry, right? No matter what nationality you are peasant, whatever race, gender, all that, which makes all this discussion of Meghan's being hurt that her children were a little bit darker than the rest of the siblings or the grandchildren of the queen, right? She's butthurt over that. They really don't care about that. That's something that's manufactured by Tina Brown and Anna Wintour and Piers Morgan, with the cooperation of the British-owned American television networks and film studios and radio chains, right? So that's Stephen Frears. He also directed a film called The Queen. Yeah, starring Dame Helen Mirren. This is in 2006, and this was to present a sympathetic portrayal, a representation of Queen Elizabeth II. And I felt less sorry for her, but Helen Mirren is an incredible actress. From the time she starred in a film with James Mason, I think she was 17, 18 years old. And by the way, she appears butt naked in it. But that's not the reason the movie's good. I thought it was going to be sort of a Lolita type of a tale, but it was a pretty well done film, and you can't get it on Netflix. I had to order it and watch it because I'm interested in two people. One, James Mason, and who's an incredible actor, and I'm also interested in Helen Mirren, rather. Yeah, mirror. Maybe she is a mirror. Maybe she is a from the broken mirror through the glass darkly. Dame Helen Mirren. So anyway, that's Stephen Frears. I give you a little bit of his bona fides, his contribution to the propaganda effort. So I was interested in Diane. And of course, when I visited London to talk to a couple of authors that I was really interested in, including Gordon Thomas, who has been an incredible influence on my own research and writing, as well as learning about what we call the deep state. It was through Gordon Thomas, by the way, that I first started understanding Los Alamos, right? Remember, the nuclear bomb, all that research, understanding Los Alamos and this guy that was involved. What's his name? I can't remember the scientist. But I was first time I understood Los Alamos as being not so much about nuclear weapons anymore, but about interdimensional portals, interdimensional travel. That's the type of research that they're actually doing. And I couldn't get him to talk about it. Anyway, on that trip where I went to go visit him and other people, I went to Harrods department store in London, of course. And I don't think I bought anything. I couldn't afford it. Maybe I bought a little tiny tin of cookies to take back with me as a gift. But anyway, in the basement of Harrods, there was a shrine, a virtual shrine, not a religious one, but sort of a dedicated space, let's call it, to Diana Spencer, because the owner of Harrods was Mohammed Al-Fayed, who I think he was an Egyptian by nationality, fabulously wealthy. And, someone needs to do a biographical workup on him. I'm sure there's some skeletons in his closet. But anyway, his son, Dodi Fayed, was with Diana Spencer in the Mercedes limousine. I don't think it was a limousine, it was just a high-end sedan in the Pont d'Alma tunnel, right? I mentioned Pont d'Alma because it's sacrificial, right? When their automobile supposedly the driver was distracted by a paparazzi or a paparazzo, a pap, as they call it in England. And they crashed into the 13th pillar at the Pont de Alma. There's all kinds of occultic numbers and readings of it, but the upshot is that by all appearances and from all the literature that I've read quite a bit of it, it looks like that she was sacrificed in a ritualistic fashion. And I do have a good, it's mostly packed away now because I did my talk. I wrote a paper and I gave it at a seminar at the university on elite sexuality. So I'm not going to go through that right now. I'm more interested in your comments, which I'll return to in a moment. But yeah, I have a lot of books. Let me just briefly tell you about a couple of them, in case you're interested. And those who are on the Patreon, you've gotten the excerpts of this. This is Closely Guarded Secret, and it's written by Inspector Ken Worf. And the reason I mention this is because he is one of the few or many candidates who are hypothesized or suspected of being the true father of the Duke of Sussex, or Harry, as he is called. That was, and it's pretty much common knowledge. I'm not telling you anything new. It's pretty much common knowledge that Harry was, quote unquote, illegitimate. His bodyguard might have, or her bodyguard might have done it. And then there's this book, Diana, Her Last Love. Pretty interesting because her last love was, and this is why I don't buy the story about, oh, Meghan felt like so snubbed because her children were darker than their cousins, right? But Diana was involved with a Pakistani guy. He was a prominent surgeon named Hasnat Khan, Dr. Hasnat Khan. And they didn't make a big deal out of it. They didn't really make a big deal out of her dating Dodi Fayed. At that point, they pretty much washed their hands from her. But they did get her at the end, so maybe it did stick in their craw. By the way, Hasnat Khan, I haven't looked into it, but for those of you who've been watching my presentations, I'm the person who uncovered or brought forward, let's say, the salience of the Ali Khan bloodline, right? Fritz Springmeier did an incredible book, Bloodlines of the Illuminati, that everybody plagiarizes from, but he did not include the Ali Khan line. He did not include the people that are very important in the Mediterranean, the African and the south of further down southern Africa, and the Nilotic empires, of which I think Meghan Markle is a descendant, which I'll get to in a moment. But my contribution is saying, yeah, Ali Khan. And I think he was of the Khan people right here. I think he's an Ismaili. And that's for you, the researchers, to find that out. Or Aga Khan. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, he was a descendant of the Ali Khan is an honorific of one of the descendants, the lineal descendants of Muhammad, right? And that whole line is very strong there. And maybe British royalty was trying to merge with it because they don't marry out of love. You know this. They don't marry out of love or romance, right? We have a little talk on romantic comedy for Valentine's Day. They might go to the movie, but they don't buy it. I'm talking about royalty. They marry for a position and for power and for the bloodlines. You already know that. Ali Khan has a huge YouTube channel. Okay, I have to check that out. And Infidel Apostate, appropriately enough, is revealing that bit of information. And Bob K has a pun here. He's punishing us. He calls him the con man. Yeah, he's donating a lot of money. He's got the Aga Khan Foundation. I'm sure he's spreading out the largesse around. That's how you get over, right? Bring people in there. In the event that this is Barry Geekler that's saying that, in the event, this is a quote, and a lot of you have heard this if you're Alex Jones fans. In the event that I'm reincarnated, I would like to return as a deadly virus to contribute something to solving overpopulation. Prince Philip. And as you know, yeah, he's in the sick bed right now. So, maybe he's going to die, and then there's going to be a reconciliation between Harry and Meghan and Queen Elizabeth and the royal household. And all of us are going to be so happy. And it's going to be like a Hallmark romance or something along the lines of something you'd see on Lifetime television, right? Which is the women's quote unquote channel. And yeah, Bob K, sees that. Shatner was correct. Virus. Okay. Yeah. William Shatner. By the way, isn't Shatner the past tense of Shitner? Just a thought. You know what? Even academics have weighed in on Diana. Here's one, just briefly, just to show you how important she is as a cultural and a political and even the metaphysical presence here. This book by Jude Davis, Jude, it's titled Diana, A Cultural History, Gender, Race, Nation, and the People's Princess. See what I mean? She's talking about Diana, just like they're talking the academic types and the institutional types are talking about Meghan Markle and Diana from really cliched 40-year-old gender, race, nation, ethnicity types of perspective. They are not understanding Meghan Markle the way I am introducing her to you today. I'm presenting it as a hypothesis, ladies and gentlemen, and you can discuss amongst yourself whether you think it holds water, and also do your research on this, genealogical as well as cultural research. But I suspect that Meghan Markle is just not the product of an interracial relationship. Her father was quote unquote white, whatever that means. That's just too large of a designation. And her mother, was not just black. I mean, that's really vague, right? There's such a diversity amongst quote unquote white people and black people, Asian people, Latino. These are just categories that these academic people have put together to really, I think, distract us from the specifics of these certain bloodlines. And when you're talking about specifics of the Meghan Markle bloodline, I think she's Nubian. She comes from the ancient Nilotic empires that were overrun first by the Egyptians, and then by the Romans, and then the Ottoman Empire. And so it's only natural that as a person carrying those genetics from these ancient African Nilotic civilization of Kush, which, by the way, I studied as a political science on my own, because we didn't have that curriculum there. It was from a Black Studies program. I got interested in the ancient cities of East Africa. A great book by Basil Davidson. It was flawed, but it's the first time I really, admittedly, started understanding the African continent other than from the movies, Tarzan and the comic books, and it was the Dark Continent. I really got into it, and I'm returning to that interest, and I've never been to that part of the African continent. I hope to at some point, but I understand Meghan Markle is coming from that bloodline, migrating northward, because the British throne, the people sitting on it now and their predecessors very much view themselves as the inheritors of the great classical civilizations of Northern Africa through the Mediterranean, up through what is now Italy, the Venetians, and later, and the finance people. This is all part of mainstream history, by the way. And I'm truncating, I'm shortening it for the lack of time, right? And then, of course, finally migrating through continental Europe, through Germany and France, Transylvania, as we spoke of it, and Central Europe, and what say called Eastern Europe, right? And finally winding up in what is now Britain or England, back Albion in the mists of time. But they take that lineage and that heritage seriously. They, on the one hand, they talk about Britishness and Englishness and obsess about it, perhaps in certain ways, but they've never, of course, strayed far away from that obsession and the necessity of maintaining the lineage from the pharaohic or pharaonic times all the way to the present 2021. So think about that. Think about Meghan Markle as a Nubian, as a hey, someone put Wakanda. I was going to go there. Yes, Barry Giegler. Why do you think these movies are coming out like the Black Panther, the animated show, Wakanda? Why do you think people like Jordan Peele and certain African-American musicians, filmmakers, and artists are glorifying the Nubian. I mean, there's even rap groups that have a whole mythology behind their output, like Brand Nubian, right? And they talk about the original Afro-Asiatic man, and African man was in China, and Japanese people are in truth African, and the Africans were here. They're the original Aborigines of what's now the United States, and they are the original Pacific Islanders, right? And whether it's true or not is really secondary, and there probably is a certain degree of truth to it. I mean, people have been roaming the world and sailing all over and walking from here, to who knows where for millennia. We moderns did not invent travel, right? So whether it's true or not, the point that I would like us to consider is that this is all part of a build-up, just like they built up Princess Di, and they're building up Meghan Markle. They built up Princess Grace Kelly. They're building up an entire people, and those people with African genetics, which will include the African Americans in the U.S. and other parts of the world, in order to destroy them. They're targeted for destruction. And we've seen some preliminary attempts with this along these lines done through the pharmaceutical cartel. And we're seeing a secondary wave of it, but they can't make it too obvious. I'm talking about the handlers who are trying to follow Prince Philip's observations about coming back as a V word, right? That's my take there. So there needs to be some voices like Steve Cockley, who was on YouTube, and he met an unfortunate demise. He died kind of early. He was the first one, Steve. I think his stuff's still on YouTube. Check it out. But he's the first one to finger the black bourgeoisie as being complicit with the power elite in order to eradicate everyday African American people of African genetic heritage. And they go through the black, the Negro Masonic lodges. Peter Duke and myself and Tracy Connors talked about the Prince Hall Masonic stream, but beyond that, there's or within that, there's an entity called the Boule, and the Boule is a French word that refers to the advisors to the emperor during the height of the Greco-Roman civilization. And these people were Africans, right? Forget about these movies you saw in the 30s, 40s, and 50s about colored people, as they were called, as shoeshine boys and all that. That's relatively recent. Before that, people of African heritage were seen as nobility, warriors and writers and artists and creatives, artisans, gold, and people who were at the forefront of world technology at the time. All that stuff came later to try to restructure our understanding of what people of African origins really are. But now they're selectively trying to re-glorify people of African heritage so they can take them down once and for all. And they have to destroy it from the culture first. So yeah, good call there about Wakanda, the kingdom of of Wakanda. Where are the black mummies? Well, the Egyptian people were African people. So if that's what you mean, they're definitely African genetics, heavy genetics. And again, returning briefly to Oprah Winfrey, there's no reason why she's much more interested in Africa, in Black Africa, than she is in African America. Why isn't she taking all that wealth that's passing through her, because that's not her money, this is money of globalists that are being passed through the brand name Oprah, just like the brand name Stephen Frears, just like these people who we know, the public face. Why isn't she investing in Chicago? That's where Harpo Enterprises is, her studio that she likes to brag about how she's creating so much job. Yeah, maybe so, but most of her purloined wealth is taken out of the country and invested in African countries. Let's clean up. Let's take care of business at home. Maybe she's given some instructions that she's going to present this benevolent face to African people so that they'll lower their guard and be much easier to screw over. That's my take on Queen Oprah, Empress Oprah Winfrey, in a nutshell. I've studied her quite carefully. The Hellenes were Egyptian priests who had specific capitals associated with the pillars of their temples. Probably so. You know more about this than I do. The point is that the cliched history that we learn in K through 12 and even in the university didn't really cover it all. And that's wonderful because that leaves so much space and room for new exploration, and it's so exciting. I mean, young people today who are moving away from so-called ethnic studies and women's studies in droves. They're leaving the whole GLBTQ framework, and they're really interested in the pagan world, the pre-Christian era, and the world of the ancient African kingdom. See, the kids who are growing up watching the Black Panther cartoon, the animated Wakanda, they say, wow, this is interesting. I think I'm going to read up on it. And they're going to find all this incredible, real historical information about the connection between the Greco-Roman Empire, Northern Africa, and all the Nilotic civilizations. So, there's some hope there. Christy Liebel, she said, she did leave Chi-Town, Chicago. I visited the studios many years ago. And, she also shut down her magazine. She's always, up to something. I mean, when I say she's a brand name. Remember, those decisions are not Oprah Winfrey's. Hancock works with the haplogroups. Wow, yeah, haplotypes, genetics. Very much part of the story here. Yes, Marty Farrell is here. And by the way, I don't know if he would mind me mentioning it. He's related to the great Joseph P. Farrell, or Farrell, one of my favorite writers. And he says, Sigma Pi Pi, yes, that is what's called the Black Boule. And it's the Black Boule who are riding herd over the larger African-American community. And they have a representative in all the different corporations and in Hollywood, in the film. I'm sure Jordan Peele is in discussion with the lower members of the managerial elite amongst Sigma Pi Pi. It's Boule, B-O-U-L apostrophe E. Check it out. Look at Steve Cogley. He is the person that broke it down. Also, Professor Griff. Remember Professor Griff? He talks about the Black Boule as being instrumental in the oppression of African-American people at the behest of these larger globalist forces. So when you talk about Black Lives Matter, hey, do they matter to us? They don't matter to these supra royalty up there, or self-appointed royalty. They're blaming us for what their obsession is. I'm talking about the royal people, right? And that's part of, you're hitting on this. And that's part of the show, the drama, the theater that Harry and Meghan are putting on for us, saying that, even the royal family's racist, and this is a problem that we need to really work on. Yeah, it's a problem, but it's not a problem for the peasantry, not for me and you. It's a problem for your people who want to ride herd on the cattle, us. You think you're a pharaoh, and we're just these people that are going to be building the pyramid of power for you, and then you can just dispense with us. No. We have knowledge. We have wisdom, indigenous wisdom, and that comes from the matriarchal line, from Slovenia, from Okinawa, from Native America, from all parts of the world, from Antarctica, wherever there are human beings. We've got the mojo, we've got the power, we have the insight. We can break it down. This is, attacks on it. Of course, they're going to say, it's those shop owners who are selling you cigarettes by the piece and are exploiting you. And that's a really easy one. Bill Cosby is someone they built up. Chappelle, Martin Lawrence, wasn't he seen walking around the middle of the street naked, disoriented, right? So pick any of these comedians that are hot right now. They got that little guy, what his name, because he started, he came out truthful a little bit too quickly. But see all the top African American comedians right now, and they're going to follow the Cosby trajectory unless they jump off the carousel and, like Chappelle, leave the country for a while. He's still good though, but he kind of like opened the curtain a little bit. And yeah, Cat Williams. I loved Cat Williams. He was good, but he was truthful. That's why he had to, they took him off the stage, gave him the hook. Kevin Hart, yeah, I saw his show that was in his home because he's under lockdown, and he said, "Damn, just when Black people are making it big in these big arenas and these theaters and just jamming in people, the live audience, then this lockdown happens, and now I have to hold my show in my home." Now he's got a huge home, right? He's got like 50 of his closest friends there. But I get his point, right? All they got to do is just say, sorry, there's not going to be any more public gatherings, or they can shut down the NFL, or they can shut down MLB, or they can shut down the NBA. You see what I'm saying? It's very, and take any group whatsoever, they can pull the plug on you really easy once they've got you pinned up and corralled in a certain area. So diversify and look out. The like the OJ said, the great song "Backstabbers." Yeah, listen to that. The pat on the back may hold a knife, and oftentimes it does. Okay, I only have a couple minutes here, so let me catch up on some of the really interesting comments. Yeah, it's Chris Coakley. Am I getting it right? Or Steve? I think it was Steve Coakley, not Chris, but you'll find it. Did a huge hit piece on Boulay. And again, check out Professor Griff, right, with a Public Enemy. He was the brains of the operation. They had a whole casting right there. And they seemed to be real, and they went out, of course. By the way, I saw the great documentary. It only went so far, but from personal perspective, on Christopher Wallace, better known as the notorious B.I.G. There's much more to that story there. He was kidding. It was not just a beef about the East Coast versus the West Coast and Tupac Shakur. And I know this because I'm reading this 2-volume account by Randall Sullivan, who killed Tupac Shakur, and I'll report to you. Thanks for your Patreon support. It allows me to buy this material, and we'll talk about it. And a lot of it plays out right in plain sight in the popular culture, in the killings, the assassinations, and in literature, right? Comic books, Wakanda and the Black Panther. That's a Marvel product, Marvel comic books. And comic books, it's not serious. That's just kids read. That's just fun stuff. No. A lot of the social programming is done there. The Twilight language is repeated. It puts out, just like when I was watching Tarzan movies. That was truthfully, that's what was my understanding of what Africa was. There was Tarzan and Jane and the chimp, Cheetah. And I didn't realize Cheetah was already being injected with simian viruses to spread to the rest of the population. That came much later. LeBron, King James, yeah, okay. You're mentioning Kobe Bryant in the same sentence. Derek Holmes, wow, what was that about? That helicopter accident? My gosh. Nipsey Hussle, yes, also. There's a whole list of people. That list is almost as long as the dead scientists of the past 10, 15 years that the great Steve Quayle has been updating, right? These are all people who were in research projects that brought us into the situation today in 2021. They all wind up dead, right? Or missing in action. Yeah, Bill Cosby's son, Ennis, was murdered on the street, and that case has never really been solved. And it's a great tragedy that these individuals befall. That doesn't mean that we should not aspire to greatness and put our truth out there in public, but just understand that you're going to have to suffer the consequences. They might deplatform you. They might close down your Patreon account. They might send 4 University of California attorneys to get you out. They might take away 3/4 of your salary for a year. I mean, I'm talking about myself. and sent honey traps after you and threaten you with El M, like the Mexican mafia or the Chinese mafia, United Bamboo. They're going to send them on me. I say, hey, bring it on. Because, I come from the warrior stock too. And I like challenges. I like to test myself intellectually as well as physically. That's honor. That's what a man of honor does, whatever your race, nationality, your origins, or wherever you live in the world. That's how men roll. You dig? All over the place until they started putting the hormones in there, right? That's another talk two weeks ago that I discussed how that operated with Dr. Hans Asperger and these other people that were funded by the Rockefeller Foundation. All of that, right? So we're at the end of our talk today. I really enjoyed today's chat. You know what? I think I should be doing a little bit more chats. I have a lot more fun with them, and I'm very impressed by the scope of your learning, your information, and I'm learning a lot of really good connections here. And man, that gives me a lot of hope where we're taking this, ladies and gentlemen. And we will prevail. We peasants, I'm just saying that because I don't believe we're the true royalty of the world. We're the true nobility. Those people are usurpers. And they're scared. Boy, are they scared. That's why they're running this op right now with Meghan and Harry show, the Hearts and Minds, Operation Hearts and Minds, right? And by the way, while Lyndon Johnson was talking about how we're going to win the hearts and minds of the Vietnamese people, he was dropping napalm on them. He was dropping Agent Orange on. He was engaged in the most horrific genocidal activity. Him and his generals in NATO were involved in nothing less than the attempted extermination of a whole group of people. But I am happy to report to you that I visited Vietnam about 3 years ago, and they're rebuilding and they're back. So that shows you a demonstration of the irrepressibility of the human race. We're all together. We're all going to prevail, and we're going to break it down and understand and take human civilization to the next level. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for being with me today. And I will remind you, we're going to chop it up with John O'Loughlin and the great George Webb. I want to find out more details on this most recent attack on his name and in his bloodlines. And, he'll be avenged, just like John O'Loughlin's father, his family, the Irish people, they'll be avenged one way or another. All right. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. See you later.